Still trying to herd all those ducks into a nice neat row before you get started with your business or project? Maybe you've already started, but your fear is stopping you from up-leveling. Or maybe you've spent your life saying yes to everyone else, but committing to yourself is still on your to-do list. Hi, I'm Claire Barton, and I'm a recovering perfectionist too. Welcome to the show where I share simple, practical, and mindset tips to get you doing work you're passionate about, making the money you want, and spending your time and energy building your dream lifestyle. Hello, recovering perfectionists. It's Claire here, and I have got the amazing Katie Godden with me today. Good morning, Katie.
Good morning.
Katie and I just want to actually say, I'm going to start this off a little bit differently to how I normally do. I'm like, how should I introduce you? And Katie gave me all of the beautiful things that she does and that she works with, and that's actually what we're going to start talking about today. But suffice to say, Katie works with people to reclaim their awesomeness, which I love. It can mean so many different things to different people, but you obviously work with people who are struggling with their emotions, or they can't quite get their shit together to go from A to B, or they've got all of these things going on. And I can't wait to talk a bit about your journey and your perfectionism stuff and all of that sort of thing as well. But before I do that, I'm going to hand over to you to be a bit more articulate than I am about you and what you do now and who you work with and all of that sort of thing. And then we'll talk about your amazing story.
Sure, absolutely. Great. Thanks for having me. So yes, I'm all about reclaiming your awesomeness. And the whole point behind that is exactly what you're saying about our awesomeness is actually whatever that is for us individually, and how we want to find that and how we want to grow our awesomeness so that we can be the best version of ourselves. So a lot of the people that I work with, we work from an emotional level where we carry all this baggage around with us from events and things over life. And what I do is I work with people to get rid of the stress, get rid of the baggage, lighten the load a little, and actually start to live their lives the way they want to, the way they imagined it, and also strengthen their mindset, get into a place of optimal wellness for them. And part of that journey, is looking at our mindset, where our thinking and our programming comes from, where those patterns have come in, and how we can shift them to reclaim our awesomeness and get to our optimal level of life.
Oh, I love it. It sounds so perfect, and I think it perfectly sums up what you do. So for anyone listening, Katie and I guess we've known each other for probably almost a year now, I reckon, and we've done quite a bit of work together with one of the courses that I put out, and also through some other, through Batshit Crazy and all that sort of thing. So it's been awesome to kind of watch part of your journey and to be involved in some of those conversations and see your light bulb moments and all of that sort of thing as well. So I would love to actually start with talking about that, because a lot of what we talk about on the show is ways to kind of give yourself permission and forgive yourself and be a bit playful with trying things out when you haven't quite got, all your ducks in a row and you don't know exactly what it looks like, or you do, but then it changes a little bit later and you've got to pivot. And, we all have these freak out moments going, oh, but then, people will think that I'm doing that, but now I do this, or it's a slightly different message, or it's the same work, but it's a different sandwich board version of what it is, and that sort of thing. So I'd love to just kind of, if you can, in your words, talk about your journey from when you started your business to now, and all those sort of ins and outs on a practical level, like what that has actually looked like. And then we can kind of delve into all the scary stuff about the perfection when we start beating ourselves up about changing again, or getting so passionate about something again, and then that wasn't actually quite the thing, or whatever it was. So I'd love to hear that in your words.
Yeah. It's an interesting journey. When I first started business, it was all about helping people change their lives, right? Which is so massive. So it was about transformation. And my original journey started out, I was baking paleo food. I had a little industrial kitchen in my house, and so I was at home plus teaching. And when I got into doing the whole paleo around health and wellness, because that's a whole nother story, but that was part of my journey into my business, was I created these paleo foods. And then people were asking, how was I looking so well? How did I lose the weight? how was I actually just doing it? And I'd give them everything, and then they couldn't implement it themselves, or they struggled with it, or there were all these reasons and excuses and frightening things that came up. So I then decided that I needed to dive more into it, because there had to be something that created a difference for me in my health journey and others in theirs, which got me into my mindset training and looking at our emotions and our beliefs. So when I started out working with people, it was working with parents with children with anxiety. And that was a huge thing for me, because being an educator, there was so much anxiety in kids these days that my thoughts were, if we could talk to the parents and the parents could support the kids, we'd make a difference. Then my business evolved a little bit more, and I started to get into just working with adults and their anxiety. And then again, it shifted, and it was kind of like I was in this big ocean, right? And I was just swirling around, and I kind of couldn't find my feet. But in all essence, I remember having a conversation with you early in my journey about how did I get here? And I remember explaining to you the story about I felt like I'd been in an airplane crash, right? Yeah. So my journey started that I'd crashed in through some life events, and there were parts of me scattered everywhere. And so this mindset, this wellness, this vitality, this stress, this emotional baggage that I was getting rid of was piecing my plane back together. But we discussed that like the tail end of my plane was left way back to Billy-O, because it was not welcome anymore. And that was the party girl, drinker, sabotage, mean thing. So my business then started to revolve around trying to help people with that, but being able to articulate it perfectly was the challenge for me. So it's always been the same story, right? But it was that challenge of, how do I explain that to people? So my journey went from, I was talking about getting ourselves unbusy, I was then talking about something else, and then public speaking and all these great things coming through. And the perfectionist side of me really struggled with actually just sticking with something and exploring that idea, which I've now come to terms with, that my journey is an exploration of myself and those people that are in my tribe. And so giving myself permission to be able to do that and openly, vulnerably share that with the world has been a really key part in being okay with what's going on with my business.
Oh, I love that entire story, but I think you've hit the nail on the head when you sort of say that doing it is the thing. Like doing it and stepping up, actually, it obviously helps you, but it also holds the door open for other people. We talk about that a lot. Like when you do the action or the behavior or make the decision that is going to make you as vulnerable as you've ever been, and as visible as you've ever been, and as unapologetic, hopefully, as you've ever been as well, that it is super scary. But the first time you do it will always be the hardest, because then once you've done it, everyone seems to follow and they're like, oh, thank God. Yes, exactly. I totally agree. And it holds space for them. And once you see how much your simple act of bravery, which is usually not as death and destruction as we all make it out to be, That's right. It actually helps other people to do the same thing. And that is the purpose of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really big, right?
It is really big. And one of the biggest things that has made a huge difference in my journey was actually looking at the journey from a totally different angle. So for me, it was always talking about stepping out of my comfort zone. I had to step out of my comfort zone. I had to step out and do this. I had to step out and be brave and do this. But when I looked at it, when I view it, and I share this with my clients, right? When I look at it, it's more of expanding my comfort zone. Because I have this comfort zone that I'm really, really happy with, but it's pushing it out to that next level and pushing it out to that next level, which constantly takes you into that growth, change, creating that life you want by just simply changing the words that we have with it, rather than step outside our comfort zone to expand it. Because I think, like you're saying, that being afraid of actually doing these things and being vulnerable if we can look at it in a way that it's okay to do it, because we push ourselves all the time. But if we take out the stepping out, which scares the absolute bejeebers out of me, if I just expand it, then I give myself permission to be vulnerable and explore these ideas. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does, actually. It's a really big thing. I really struggle, not really struggle, but something that's always on my mind is this whole, like, I want things to be easy. So my mantra at the moment is, like, if it's not easy and it's not fun, I'm not doing it. Like, I'm not there. I'm not in that space. I want things to be easy. I want them to be fun, which, there's lots of languaging around that. A lot of other people would call it flow or aligned or on purpose or something like that. Easy and fun feels accessible to me, and that's what I'm kind of filtering everything through. Yeah. But then I also have this other part of me that's going, but a lot of my big growth and breakthroughs and development and that sort of thing has come from doing things that were hard and getting and doing that comfort zone thing. So I'm like, I'm not really sure where I sit with this, because I do believe in doing things that are hard, but I guess there's a difference between things that are hard and challenging and things that are just fucking hard and a pain in the ass, right? That's a really nice way of looking at it, actually, I think, is rather than stepping out of your comfort zone and that feeling scary and being like, I still need to feel, a certain level of safety, if not comfort, in order to go through. And I mean, everyone's different on that scale. I'm very high on I like safety, stability and security and all that sort of thing. And once I've got that, I feel like I've got that safety net. Then I'll go and do the fun, outrageous stuff, because I've kind of got somewhere to run away to if it all blows up in my face,
Yeah,
But yeah, expanding your comfort zone is a really interesting concept. So how do you do that, though? Like, it's all, stepping out of your comfort zone would suggest that you literally just plunge headfirst into something that's scary.
Yeah.
But expanding means what? What does that look like?
Sure. So for me, I would always do that. I'd leap over, dive into the fearful stuff and try and swim. And then all of a sudden I'd totally retreat, because I'm like, whoa, that was way too deep for me.
Yeah.
But so for expanding the comfort zone is pushing yourself to the point that it frightens you, and then stepping back a bit, stepping back from that and going, okay, that frightens the hell out of me. Step back. What's the next step back that will still allow me to make changes and grow my business and grow myself, but it's not going to make me so frightened and scared that I'm not going to follow through. So I have
goosebumps all over my entire body.
It's so really cool, right? It's really cool. And there's a client, I'll just give you a specific example if that's okay. There's one of the clients that I've been working with, and she's just starting her own business. And so for her, she had loads of anxiety and she was petrified, but she really wants to grow her own business. So she's come for support with me. And what we've done is we've taken away all the baggage, all the stuff from the past that's no longer serving her. And we've set in place some steps. And so each time she does it, we look at it from the lens of just expanding her comfort zone. So even if it's something like she didn't want to go on social media. So I said to her, well, why don't you just set a goal and have a go at that and push it till you're uncomfortable, but you're not freaking out. Yeah. Does that, so, and she really resonated with that. So she's now doing those, and she messages me and goes, oh my gosh, guess what I did today? I expanded my comfort zone. Yeah, and she loves it because it's a really nice place of being able to, it's a thought process and it's a viewing through a different lens. So if you can look at whatever it is that you want to do, so if you want to create an online course, if you want to look for some form of membership, well, push yourself as far, maybe you can't leap in right now, but what are the steps that are going to bring you closer so where you want to be is not so far away, and attack those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that really resonates as well. And I guess when you were talking, I was like, I feel like that's one of my superpowers, is breaking things down for people in terms of the practical stuff. So you do that on the mindset stuff where it's not like, and I mean, there's so many motivational speakers and coaches and people out there who rave about things like JFDI, just fucking do it and just go and do it. Like there's all this sort of thing, which I'm absolutely not in that school. Like I probably have mentioned, I'm like safety back here, like shut up, I'm going to my cave.
There's nothing wrong with safety.
No, well there's not, but we're kind of taught, especially in other circles. I know you and I are lucky enough to move in a lot of circles where it is very supportive and very tribal. There's lots of beautiful heart-centered women who support all of this sort of thing. But in a lot of circles, in corporate and in work and in a lot of family and traditional sort of circles, it's not like that. It's like, get out there, go for it, just do it, all of those sort of messages. And you kind of feel like a bit of a wimp or a bit of a loser if you can't do those sorts of things, right?
Yeah.
And I love that there's ways of actually chunking down the personal development. You don't have to go to a Tony Robbins 10-day retreat and get all fixed.
Yes.
To be able to go on social media. You can actually make it a 2-year process or a 5-year process or a 3-week process, whatever that looks like for you. It doesn't have to be jumping in head first and feeling disgusting, because we all know, like, the more that you do that, you're so vulnerable, and your skin gets a bit thin or whatever you want to say, and something happens and you're like, well, there you go. There's the evidence that I was looking for before, because it didn't work. Blah, blah, blah. People hate me. I think I'll go and eat some cake, sort of thing.
That's right.
So yeah, breaking down the mindset change is a really interesting concept. I think I love that you're talking about that sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that has been coming out a lot lately. Like, so in my business journey and in developing who I have become as a business owner, there's always been these different directions and these different things happening. But what I've come to learn about myself over the last few months is that it's step by step. You know, everything is step by step. So the change in our health needs to be step by step, that the change in my mindset is step by step, the change in my relationships and the way that I work with my family and then my colleagues and then my clients, like, everything is just step by step. And if we can keep putting it one foot in front of the other, then the growth happens, the change happens, and get rid of that idea that I have to do it perfectly straight up. That was what I had to get rid of.
Yeah, exactly. So two little questions, then I won't want to move on to the other stuff, but the two little questions, when it comes to breaking it down and doing it step by step, what are some of the other little practical things? Like, do you recommend always working with someone or having people around you who can support you, or is there any other little kind of safety nets that we can have in there to support us on those little baby steps?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the big ones that I've started to use, so I'm a fan of Brené Brown's and love her work. And she talks about supporting yourself with like 5 people that you trust the most. So when you're doing these baby steps and you're wanting to change the mindset, have just a handful of people that you really trust their opinion and only ask them. See, before I was a big go out and get everybody's opinion before I could start something and before I could move on with it. But if you can just pick 4 or 5 people that you really trust, if you've got an idea or something that you're coming up with, trust that they will tell you their honest answer and that they're going to throw it back at you. Yeah, this is a great idea, or no, it's not. So not just yes people. So that's sort of one thing if we're looking at changing the mindset. The other thing, it does help to have a coach. So at the moment, I've even got my own coach for my journey. And she has been saying things back to me that I didn't even realize I was saying. Like, I was creating my own story. And, you know, and she put it right back at me, and I'd never heard it that way before. So I think it's really important in this step-by-step journey that you have someone, whether it be a coach, whether it be a loved one, whether it be your best friend, that can hear your story out and hear what story you're creating and maybe see it in a whole new light for you. I think it's important not to bottle it in, because when we start to bottle it in, we create this whirlwind spiral inside our minds that sometimes we can't get out of. So if we can have an outsider who has no emotional attachment to our work, none of that we have, then their view on things is really valuable. As long as you love, trust and support, and they know you, right? Like, they know who you are, they know what you value and believe. So that's really important too.
Yeah, right. And they know what your tendencies are when you're not being honest with yourself.
Absolutely.
Basically,
Yeah.
someone who can call you on your bullshit is what you're saying. Someone who can
Absolutely.
like, sorry, back that up a little bit.
Yeah,
I'm really lucky / maybe a little bit unlucky sometimes because there's nowhere to hide with my best friend. We've known each other for 20 years plus. I think I was 15 when I met her in high school. And she's also a psychotherapist, counsellor, social worker, that sort of thing. And I'm like, I can't. Sometimes I have to say, take that hat off, just do the best friend thing. I don't need your advice. I just need you to like cry with me or bring wine or something. Stop putting it back on me. But yeah, it is fantastic, but also terrifying sometimes.
And it is. And that's expanding our comfort zone though, right? Like you're talking to her and she's expanding your comfort zone every day. So it's
absolutely. Oh my gosh, absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like a crap friend most of the time because I've got nothing. I'm like, oh, that sucks. Let's drink wine. I don't bring much to the friendship at all.
Sometimes that's all the
comparison. That's true. That's true. Yeah. So the other mini question, not mini, they're all big questions. We could do a whole podcast on any of these probably. But the other question I wanted to bring back before when you mentioned when you're going through expanding your comfort zone, that you get to a point and you take a step and you're like, oh, that feels gross. I'm just going to half step back and see what's going on. I would call that like a self-observation or observing yourself or something like that. And I think that is one of the well, certainly for me, it's been a really big game changer. Even now where I feel like I've done so much work on purpose and also just through experience and, you know, starting a business is your best self-development thing.
Absolutely.
But there's things that I hear myself saying and immediately I'm like, oh, is that what my head says? Okay, that's interesting. But having that power, that self-awareness and that power of observation to go, oh, that was a thought, and let it go. It's not just something they say in meditation class. It's actually a thing that you can do, right? I didn't realize. I thought it was just like a bit of a cute thing to say. But actually having that, even just, I guess probably someone saying, do the scary thing, wait until it feels really scary, then take a step back and then actually work out what's going on. And a lot of people obviously journal on it and all that sort of thing. But I think that's it's a massive game changer. And when you start noticing yourself, it's like, okay.
It's fun though, right?
It's super fun, but it's also different. I think it's new. Maybe I was just living under a rock for a long time, but being able to actually observe yourself and give yourself permission as though you were another person. I like to talk about inner child and all that sort of thing. Something that I used to talk about a lot early on in the podcast actually, and a really big thing that started the recovering perfectionist kind of exploration journey for me was I saw something probably on Instagram or something ridiculous that said when you look at yourself in the mirror or something to that effect, and what you say to yourself when you look at yourself in the mirror, would you ever say that to your best friend? And that was like, oh God, every time I say it I choke up because I just think it is devastating. I'm like, never, I would never ever ever say that to my worst enemy. Why the hell am I saying that to myself? But having I think that was kind of a bit of a moment just going, God, I have such high expectations of myself that I would never place on other people. And then having that, part of the observation. So sorry.
Yeah.
Tell me about what you think of all that.
But I totally agree because, the power in acknowledging what's going on within ourselves is incredible. And if you can, we have so many thoughts that go through our heads every single day that are creating our reality, that if we can capture some of those thoughts that are pushing us in a direction we don't want to go, or you get curious about it, that's one of my biggest things is get curious about yourself. Because if we want to be a great leader for our family, our business, our clients, then if we can get curious about ourselves first as well, then the power of that is amazing. Because you're exactly right. When we acknowledge those things that come up or those things that we say and we call our own bullshit, we're strengthening that muscle. And if you can strengthen that muscle each and every day, then the growth that you're going to have is going to be astronomical as well, because you're catching out the rubbish story that you're telling to yourself or that mean girl that comes through, because I heard exactly the same story early on in my work with mindset about would you say that to yourself or would you say it to your daughter? or would you say it to your son? And you just go,
oh no,
oh, Molly, no.
When did I get so mean?
Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm not a mean person.
Yeah.
But sometimes we really are to ourselves. And I think we need to also make room for the compassion. Like, we need to be compassionate with ourselves when things don't quite go the way we would ideally like them to, because you know what? Hashtag life happens.
Yeah.
and you've just got to be able to acknowledge and move forward with those things as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, I think compassion for everyone, but especially ourselves. And I think
it starts with us.
It totally starts with us, but we're always the last person we think of, right? There was a thing I heard recently, I can't remember where it was, but there was an activity where a group of women, I think it was, I don't think it was women and men, but a group of women were asked to write down if a flood came through, what would be the first 10 things you'd take out of your house, or if your house was burning down or whatever. And they all listed out their dogs, cats, kids, parents, partners, whatever, and not a single person said themselves.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
But it's just not how we think, right? And that's a beautiful way to illustrate, like, we throw everyone else out the burning house, but we forget ourselves. But actually, if you didn't throw yourself out, you can't save anyone else anyway. Like the whole serving from an empty vessel, blah, blah, blah. We all get that stuff.
Oh, I love it, because that's part of the personal journey that I'm on at the moment too. Is like, I was always about this rescuing others.
Yeah.
So everything would happen to rescue others, and it was all outside myself. So everything that I was doing was for someone else. It was to protect someone. It was to look after someone. It was to make sure that they didn't get in trouble. It was to make sure, you know, for example, my dad would leave his socks on the floor and my mum refused to pick them up. And she always tells the story about me protecting Dad, because I would sneak in, pick his socks up and put them in the wash basket just so that his feet didn't get cold. So there's always this helping someone else, like that journey. But the real thing that I'm starting to notice is, you know, it's that old metaphor of putting our oxygen mask on first.
Yeah.
If we don't bloody protect ourselves as mums, as leaders, as people who want to help others, then we can't help others either in that way that we really want to, you know, like that really connected, deep level of help. Yeah.
Oh gosh, I'm getting all choked up because it's such a big thing. It's such a big thing. I have recently had, probably recently-ish / I don't know, trickling in over the last several years, had a bit of an epiphany about the gift of giving, or the gift of allowing other people to give.
Yeah.
And that's a big motivator for me. So in my love languages, gift comes like a very distant fifth. It's the last thing. I'm just not into gifts. I hate buying them. I get a lot of anxiety about that because I know I'm not great at it because it's not my gift. And I would rather not receive a gift unless it's something that I really want, or it's, you know, that sort of thing. It's just not on my radar sort of thing. But I also recognize, and I remember when I was probably about 15 or so, having a conversation with my aunt, and she was saying the relationship she was in, they'd walk past a street and she'd say, oh, that's a nice handbag. And the next day her partner would come back with the handbag. She's like, I didn't want the handbag. I was just saying it was a nice handbag. So she stopped even saying that's nice or I like that, because she was worried that he was just going to go and buy it. And they had to have this conversation. And what came out of the conversation was that he was like, well, I really like giving you things, and he didn't kind of have the tools to express whatever he was trying to express. So his tool was buying the thing and giving it to her as a gift, and he thought that was kind of, you know, two birds, one stone, whatever.
Yeah.
But then she realised she got really upset about it. It was like, well, stop freaking buying me things. It's too expensive and blah, blah, blah. And it was this big kind of thing. And she was like, well, she realised eventually that she had to give him the gift of being allowed to give her the things, because it filled his cup. Like, it made him feel like he was doing a thing. So whilst I don't suggest throwing yourself under the bus and being like, yes, give me the things that I don't really want. Yeah, great. That's awesome. I think there's a certain amount of truth in allowing other people to be there for you, and allowing other people to do things for you, and allowing other people to fill the space that you don't need to fill up anymore, and that sort of thing, as actually a way of giving that doesn't take it away from you.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
yeah,
It's a long way of
absolutely.
saying that, but
Yeah, but it totally makes sense.
it
So
totally
that's
makes
okay.
sense.
Totally makes sense. And I think it's really true. Even looking at my kids in my journey, I hadn't realized what they needed from me until I really sat with who I was
Mm.
and what do I need. And then all of a sudden, the world lit up, and my eldest, he just needs me to be there.
Yeah.
Just sit with him, whether it be he's doing a puzzle. I just need to sit at the table. I'm not allowed to join in, but I can sit with him at the table and it fills his cup up.
Yeah.
And for me, that's the gift of giving for him. And my other son, he likes hugs. So anytime he comes near me, he likes the affectionate touch. And so I give that to him as well. And that's also the giving. But then for me, I liked if someone does something for me, if they wash up, woo, all over it. And so I've had to learn to allow people to do that.
Yes.
And give to me as well and to receive
Right.
it. I think that's important.
Oh, absolutely. The gift of receiving, the lesson of receiving, that is a very big thing for me at the moment. Like I said, fun, easy, surrender and receiving are the other two kind of parts of that, like receiving and being okay with, and it's been a journey. And my best friend, the one who calls me on everything, she recently was like, Claire, you're going to need to call in the help, ask for help, receive the help, say yes when help's offered, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, what are you talking about? I've done heaps of work on receiving help in the last few years. I'm really good at asking for and receiving help now. And she's like, yeah. And then I was like, how did she remember that? But I, went into this whole introvert. I've just got to process all this over the next few weeks. And I realized that I'm good at asking for and receiving help only if I'm pretty sure it's not inconveniencing someone too much.
Yeah.
Like if I'm going to ask someone for help, I'll probably check out if I wanted to say someone to look after the kids. What are you guys doing this weekend? I wouldn't say, hey, any chance you could look after the kids. I'd scope out if there was something that I perceived that was more important than the thing that I wanted to do if I didn't have, that sort of thing. Yeah. Rather than just going, can someone help me or whatever, I've just got to make sure that it's not going to inconvenience someone too much. So that's my new thing, is to be okay with being an inconvenience sometimes, because I'm happy to be inconvenienced because I feel like it's a nice thing to do for people, and to a point obviously, but I'm happy if someone needs my help and they ask for it. If it inconveniences me, that's cool. So why am I not okay with asking other people to be inconvenienced by me slightly?
And I think that's a really good point though, because it's your perception too.
Totally.
That it's inconvenient.
My values, exactly.
Right. Because it's quite often we get in the way of ourselves because the way we view the world is just we see it as an inconvenience when they're going, oh my God, I've been waiting to help you.
Right, exactly.
Thanks for letting me help you.
Yeah, totally. All right, we could talk about this for hours. I'm so into this conversation. But before we started recording, you mentioned something about your health journey, and I really want to just tap into that a little bit because I think it's really relevant for a lot of people, either in their childhood or in their adulthood or wherever in between, physical and mental health stuff and all of that sort of thing. So I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about your journey with that and the reflection that you're kind of having at the moment around all of the perfectionist health stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So I've been a type 1 diabetic for 33 years. And at the moment, I'm all about putting my mask on, right? My oxygen mask, so that I can take care of my family for the long run. So it's all about longevity for me. And the discovery that I'm doing at the moment is, the perfectionist side has been programmed into me, right? So that's the way I'm viewing it at the moment. I'm going through a mindset journey and looking at getting myself to optimal health that I can as a type 1 diabetic, optimal health for as long as I possibly can. And part of that journey is looking into the patterns that are occurring in my life, the things that are coming up. And so for me at the moment, as a diabetic, when I was diagnosed 33 years ago, everything was about being perfect. So it was about having the perfect sugar levels. It was about having the perfect amount of insulin. It was about doing my finger pricks and insulin injections at the perfect time. Had to be half an hour, not 15 minutes. Like there was no room for error. And this was a life thing, right? I couldn't go outside without shoes on because if I got an infection, then at the time when I was a kid, my toe would be chopped off. That was my perception. So there was all this pressure from, I was 4 when I was diagnosed, right? So that's a hell of a journey to throw on someone. And so this perfectionism was built into me. Everything was about time, eating, and what my sugar levels were. And as I'd gone through in my journey, I'm looking at the moment, well, these ebbs and flows, where 1 minute I'm stellar, everything's going great. The moment that it's not perfect, there's a plummet, because why bother? It was just, I put my hands up and go, well, it's not working. Why the fuck should I care? And it would come through. So, I was a young girl. I couldn't do things. My sugars weren't right, whatever. I'd eat anything. Then I was a teen, and I was quite a heavy teen. And I'd come up, my sugar levels weren't quite right, but I was overweight. Oh, well, why bother? It's not perfect. And so this spiral, like I would start drinking because I didn't want to be in that, because it was all too hard to be so bloody perfect, when in reality, being a type 1 diabetic, there is no perfect, right? I've come to this realization in the last couple of years that this striving for perfectionism in that part of my life has filtered across to absolutely friggin' everything. Like, I'm talking down to how I parent my kids, how I grow my business, how I interact with people, that if things weren't perfect, why bother? And go down into that spiral of beating myself up, saying those mean things, being that mean girl to myself because it's not perfect, Katie, you haven't done a good enough job. Why bother? Why bother with it and just give up on it, and then all of a sudden I get to a point where it was so low that I was beating myself up. And then I'd go, you know what? This isn't who you are, Katie. You're not this person. So then I'd bring myself back up, and I would be so stellar. I'd be onto it. Then something could happen where it wasn't quite perfect. Okay, beat myself up again. And so it was this vicious cycle. So I've made a vow to myself to get rid of this vicious cycle, right? To kick it out, because it's not doing me any good. It's not doing my relationships any good. It's not doing my life. Like, I want to be longevity. I want my optimal health. I want to be around for when my kids have their kids and they grow up, and I want to be healthy doing that. So for me, this cycle that I'm going through, this pattern that I've created, there's been a root cause, right? Everything that I do, we talk about the root cause. So I'm delving into my vulnerable past, my issues of uncomfortableness. Sure, that's not a word, but I've just created it. And going through, well, what is this? This perfectionism is no longer serving me, because it's not actually a place you can reach, because when you reach where you think is perfect, there's a whole new level you can reach. And in our coaching, I talk about that with people, that there's this graph, right? You come along, everything's good, then you plummet down, but then you get yourself up and you're a little bit higher. You come across, good, plummet down, up. So there's always that never-ending growth that we can have, and this journey of realizing that my perfectionism is not serving me, and it only sends me into a spiral that I don't want anymore. And by working with, I've got a friend of mine who's coaching me. She does what I do, and we're working together, because coaches need coaches, right?
Totally.
To get out of our head. And so for me, it's been a really powerful journey on, well, perfectionism, how has it affected my life? And letting go of my perfectionism and being okay with experimenting, which I learnt from you, like that whole idea of experimentation and viewing it through that lens has been absolutely invaluable. And this new journey that I'm on, and I'm currently in the guts of it, right? And looking at this and how to change my way of thinking, how to switch over and actually view it in a whole new light and create the patterns that I want is where I'm at. And I think openly and being open and honest about it, I've shared it publicly online because I feel like someone else might need to hear this, because it doesn't have to be that way, and there's always a light, right? Like there's always something that can get you to where you want to be.
Right.
So
exactly. And look, I think for me as well, it's I do exactly the same thing. I have done exactly the same thing, and I often describe it as like going around and slashing the other 3 tires. So, you know, the saying, you know, giving up after one failure is like slashing the other 3 tires when you get a flat or something like that. And I've called myself on it, and I've told a few people. So often I'll have people messaging me and saying, are you going around slashing those other 3 tires? You look like you're slashing some tires right now, which is usually me not looking like anything because I just disappear from the world. I like retreat. That's my MO.
Yeah, same. Yeah,
and people know that. So I've got a few like, you know, bullshit auditors out there who can totally call me on it when I do that sort of thing. But part of and I talk about this all the time. I hope that anyone who's listening, and they listen to a lot of things, aren't sick of me saying this, but the whole trust the process thing for me, like it's not just an Instagram hashtag, but it's something that you've got to go through the process many, many times to get to the point where you can trust it. And it is this up and down. And I think when you can do the self-awareness thing and step back and go, oh, hang on, I was up last week and now I'm in this hole today, but I've been in a hole before I was up. So obviously the next thing that's coming is an up, and being able to go, okay, I'm in a down. All right, not the end of the world. Let's wallow for a few minutes. Let's drink a glass of wine, and it comes up a lot, doesn't it?
Be okay with it.
See what my coping mechanism is. But, you know, you can kind of observe, okay, this is a shit time, and you can do the self-care that you need to do, whether that means cancelling everything and watching Netflix for a day, or whether it means throwing yourself in and getting some shit done, or whether it means calling in your tribe or having a cave day, whatever it means for you at the time, and it will be different every time often. And just going, okay, that's cool, I'm down here, but I know that it's a process. So the next part of the process is to be up, and trusting that the next bit's going to be cool. And then also like leveling out the big ups as well. So don't go so far up and so extreme, because the plunge, the roller coaster is just going to be bigger. So you kind of get to a point where you're like on top of the world, and that's great, but also celebrating it, but not getting like away with the fairies kind of thing, and acknowledge that, okay, I'm up, which means the next thing is probably going to be a bit of a down. It might not be as down as the last one, but actually realizing that it is a process, being where you're at, being able to step back and see what part of the roller coaster ride you're on, but having faith in knowing that whatever's going to happen next isn't going to be forever either.
And I think adding curiosity into it, well, okay, let's get curious about this. What is that next thing going to be? Yeah. And just being curious leads you in that direction of solving the problem. That's what I find anyway. Like I find just being curious about it and going, ooh, so for me, this journey I'm so curious about, like it intrigues me and it excites me. And I'm like, oh, but one tip I want to just share with your listeners that I've found really helpful, and I implement it, is that if I get to that point of burnout or whatever it is, that dip, that I actually list all the things that I believe that I need to be doing to get me back on my even keel. And I do not do them all at once.
Good.
Because the moment that you do them all at once is that overwhelm, and then you go, oh, I can't do this, and you plummet. So I pick a couple of things, I make them a habit. I make them habitual where I'm comfortable and I'm just doing it without thinking. Then I add the next thing.
The next one. Yep.
Yeah, just to keep building those skills and habits that are going to be lifelong, you know, because we want lifelong habits, not quick fix habits.
Yeah.
And doing it that way. That's a really good tip. And I use that with my clients as well. You know, I don't ever push them to do all the things, because all the things is not helpful.
Yeah, Totally agree. I actually have I've been working with Suzanne Kohlberg, who's a health and weight loss coach, as you know, and she just rocks my world. I completely love like some of the stuff that she does that I've never heard of. She's not obviously attached to any style of eating, exercise or anything like that. She's purely mindset and practical tools and that sort of thing. But one thing, where was I going with that? I've just lost my train of thought as usual. She is just amazing.
We were just talking about breaking down.
Yeah. So one thing that she talks about is like just pick 2 or 3 goals, 2 or 3 actions, and make them a habit. And don't go into the next thing until you've mastered these ones. And I actually was looking through some old files recently, and I started a thing probably 8 years ago. I think the file was from.
Wow.
It was called like, I can't remember what it was called, but I basically had created a program for myself where I had a list of 30 things that I wanted to change about my lifestyle. Everything from I want to drink more water to I want to start yoga or something like that. But there was 30 to 50 things in this spreadsheet, I know, shock horror.
Love it.
But my rules were, I'd written it down up the top. The rules were you had to do one thing consistently with like a tick or a sticker or something in that box for 14 days, and then I could pick another thing.
Yeah.
And so I'd kind of already created this thing. It obviously never worked because I didn't print it out or stick to it, but it's such an important part of that thing where we go, okay, I need to change all these things. Shit, I need to blah, blah, blah. And then you go out and do it, and then it feels too hard. So you fall down after 3 days, and then you go and slash all the other tires, and then you end up in a bigger hole than you were to start with.
Yeah. And I find the biggest key to it is like I can't give myself with things like that you're talking about, after 14 days I can add this one. If I'm too structured, and this is just my thinking, if someone gives me a structure, I rebel against it.
Right.
So there's that little rebel in me that goes, I don't want to do 14 days. What if it's 17 days for me? Thanks, Claire Button.
Or after 10, like, I got this. I need something new.
That's right. I don't need 14 days. So I do it until I know that it's unconsciously happening.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Which is a nice way to look at it. If you are that bit of a rebel, you're making the decisions, you're making the rules around how you change and how quickly it happens.
Katie Godden, I love you so much. I've loved this chat so much. We'll wrap it up there because I think we could literally just keep going for hours and hours. But you've left us already with some tips and some ways to kind of get started. Is there any last minute things that people could start doing right now if they're listening? Is there anything that you kind of want to like finally leave us with before we wrap it up?
Absolutely. The biggest key to any success is your mind. So if you can nurture your mind by being grateful, appreciative, thankful, whatever it is, in the moments of hardship, then you can start to shift your mind. Just keep that in tow.
I love it. Thank you so much. How can we find you? How can people find you? Obviously, all your links will be in the show notes, but what's the easiest way to stalk you online?
Best way to stalk me online is just at Katie Godden Reclaiming Your Awesomeness, and that's the best place where I spend most of my time. So they can
on Facebook.
On Facebook. Yeah.
Lovely. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening, listeners. It's been a bit of a epic episode, but it was always going to happen with Katie and I having a chat. So hopefully it's given some beautiful insights, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks so much, Katie. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.